on Zoom as well. Thank you. The session will be recorded, so we will be able to help share it for those who weren't able to join us today. And we are here for the unexpected journey into leadership with our speaker today, who is Mike Iriye. And he is one of our UCI alums, currently a senior director of cloud solution architecture and security at Microsoft. And we also have our moderator here today, Vijay Kumar, who is our ICS Alumni Chapter President and also the Chief Technology Officer at PCSF Solutions. So I'm going to hand it off to Vijay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mimi. Appreciate it. Just wanted to do a quick introduction. I'm Vijay Kumar. I've been kind of in this role of working with the alumni group for almost 5 years now. My goal is just really organic. I just want to kind of give it back as much as I can. I've seen a lot of technology innovation in the area in Irvine. I live in Irvine. I just want to, make sure that's getting fed down the food chain, and we can all work together once you guys graduate. You guys can also join the alumni group as undergrad. So if you go to icsanteachers.org, there's a join now button down there. Feel free to join. Let's get involved, and we're here to help. Today, we're going to have a little discussion around technology leadership. And Mike Iriye, he's a good friend of mine. We used to work together a long time ago, and now we reconnected. And we just want to kind of show you what computer science, technology, leadership is all about. So, thank you.
I guess that's my cue.
That's your cue.
All right. Well, good afternoon. Happy Friday. I hate being kind of this buffer between your weekend and the week, so I'll try and be as entertaining and as interactive as possible. If you like what I have to say, I'm looking forward to remaining connected. I'll share my LinkedIn information. If you hate what I have to say, just remember my name is Vijay Kumar. And we don't ever have to talk again. So I'm a very proud UCI alum. I graduated here. Yeah, that's right. I graduated, over 20 years ago, and I've been working in what I call the field, and I'll explain what that means. I've been working in the field for 25 plus years. What I mean by the field is I've been working with customers in the large tech space. This is not what I thought I would be doing, but I just kind of landed in it, and I'll kind of explain how that journey unfolded. But it all started here at UCI. I met my first employer in the professional space here on Ring Road. It was totally random and by accident, but they were doing a career fair, and I met this guy. His name's Ken, and Ken ended up hiring me. And so I got my start coincidentally at the same company that Vijay here worked at out of UCI. It was called Unisys. And they have a currently large operation in Mission Viejo. They recently moved to Irvine. I think it's a little bit of a shadow of its former self. But what Unisys gave me was a launch pad for my future career. First and foremost, they gave me so much investment in training. I was flying back and forth between John Wayne Airport and Chicago, where they have their National Training Center. I spent a lot of time in Philadelphia, where their headquarters is. They even put me in front of the governor of Pennsylvania to talk about business etiquette. It was a very weird dinner. I really remember. But from day one, they made an investment in me, and I'm so grateful that I met them here at UCI. But that was my first job out of college because that set me up for the rest of my career. They didn't pay me very much. I remember coming out, I think I was making $45,000. It was definitely a pinch on the budget. But, it wasn't so much the money, it was the experience. One thing that was really critical about that first role was they put me out in the real world, meeting with customers right from the start. Customers like AIG Sun America, Paramount Studios, the state of California. I mean, I was in the room with the decision makers, and that's not usually something that a 22-year-old gets to experience. I also was never a developer. I never wrote a line of code, but I've been in tech for, 25 plus years. What it showed me was that I could have a successful career working hand in hand with customers and fill this niche of technology and business. And that's basically where I've carved out a career, is how do I communicate really technical concepts, really technical solutions, concepts that are really hard to understand, but translate that into business outcomes that customers, CIOs, CTOs, and now CISOs that I regularly interact with. How do I translate that technology into business outcomes that they care about, right? I'll talk a little bit about AI and communication skills and how AI kind of works into my daily fabric. But I'll say one thing that AI cannot do is what I just described. Translating technology in a business is not really a concept that AI can do today. So I feel some sense of job security there. But going back to Unisys and my start there, one other thing that they helped me do was they put me back into school. And so I did my MBA at USC. They largely paid for that. So thank you again to Unisys. But after I graduated from USC with my MBA, I got a job at Dell. And if Unisys was like AAA baseball, like Dell was playing Major League Baseball. Albeit it was like a mid-tier team. We weren't quite the LA Dodgers yet. But working at Dell was a really interesting experience for me because one, everyone in the world all of a sudden automatically became a customer of mine. So I got introduced to corporations throughout the United States, everything from forestry and agriculture to state and local government, finance, entertainment, as well as this emerging, Web 2.0. Salesforce was one of my customers, and I kind of took that account from really bare bones beginnings to where they are today. Dell was also a really critical point in my career because it was my first foray into leadership. They gave me my first job as a people manager. And I always knew I wanted to be a leader, but there was a lot of, I think, initial hesitation because being a leader and being an individual contributor are quite different, right? When you're an individual contributor, you get to control your world, right? It's like, as long as you control that world, you can create success. But when you are now managing a team, and through that team now accountable for a portion of the business, that's a lot. That's a much bigger responsibility. And you can be the biggest control freak, but it's really out of your control. You really have to have good team members to be successful. I wasn't a very good people manager, I'll be the first to admit, because I was only, in my mid to late 20s. And I didn't really quite have the empathy to manage a team. It wasn't easy for me. And I think in the beginning, I really expected people to think like I thought. And that was like my first fallback as a manager. But, and I'm happy to talk more about management and my approach to leading. It's a big part of my life even today. After Dell, well, I'll tell you what happened right around the tail end of my career at Dell. Michael Dell, who's obviously the founder of Dell, decided he wanted to privatize the company. This is like 2014. And he worked with some investors and he privatized the company through a leveraged buyout. And they were doing a volunteer, I can't say that word, a workforce reduction, but they were looking for volunteers. They weren't forcing people out. They did that later. But initially they were asking for volunteers. And I knew that, at least through the conversations that I was having internally with my people at Dell, if I wanted to move up, they wanted me to move to Austin. I'm born and raised here in LA, and LA Orange County. That's basically been my entire life. And so I had no interest in moving to Austin. So that was kind of my ticket, or at least in my mind, I was like, okay, I think I need to go and find something else. And so they were looking for volunteers. I volunteered and I voluntarily laid myself off. It was actually the first time that I've ever not had work, you know? And so I took it upon myself to take a little bit of a break. And I had a 3-year-old son at home. And I decided I was going to be a full-time dad for a year. And I didn't do anything for a whole year. And it was great. It was the hiatus that I was looking for. I recommend at some point in your life, you don't necessarily have to do it right when you graduate, but take a breather. You know, like it's hard to run at full speed forever. And if you're thinking, oh, I'll rest when I retire, that might be a long, long time from now. If you have the opportunity to take the break, do it. And it was during this break that I realized the one thing that I needed to do next in my career was break into software. Up until then, I was basically doing a lot of back-end infrastructure, a lot of enterprise server and enterprise storage work. But I really wanted to get into the software space. Not only does it pay a lot better, but I mean, if you just kind of follow where the success is going in technology, you can see all of the money was going into the cloud, SaaS, and hyperscalers. So I landed at Citrix. That's kind of my third stop in my journey. Citrix was a great company. They were primarily in the virtualization space. So if you're familiar with virtualization, it's basically how do I take hardware from your traditional client server and virtualize it, right, through virtual machines. And Citrix, along with VMware, pretty much the two biggest players in the industry. So Citrix was really great for me because I got exposed to a completely different area of technology. That's another maybe tip I'll just kind of insert. If you go out into the real world and you find a little niche for yourself, like technology is so broad. Don't be a networking person for like eternity, right? Like go bounce around and experience a little bit more of technology because the sector is just so diverse, right? The other interesting thing about my time at Citrix was I got really close with the vice president who was standing up this new business called customer success. And it was all around how do we get customers to adopt the technology that they bought and not have that technology sitting on the shelf gathering dust. And it's actually what I'm still doing today. So Citrix was really great for me in the sense that I got to learn what customer success was all about because I had to write the rules and the policies and how do we recruit the right people? What are they going to do? What are they going to be responsible for? And then now I'm executing on a very similar model of what I built at Citrix. And that was what got me into Microsoft, really. Microsoft called me. It was probably the easiest recruiting step in my entire career because they wanted me more than I wanted them. And I knew I always wanted to go work at one of the large big tech companies. You know, I always saw myself as either at AWS or at Google Cloud or at Microsoft. And I think Microsoft was the perfect fit because actually every company that I had worked at prior was always a partner of Microsoft. So for me, it's like just coming to the big ship, you know? And it's funny, I have group chats in Microsoft with ex-Dell people, ex-Unisys people, ex-Citrix people. It's like the great gathering place for enterprise people. People sometimes will joke, and this is where technology professionals come and die. I like to think of it more as it's the place where people come and retire because such a great company, people don't really leave. So I started out at Microsoft 9 years ago. Can't believe it's almost 9 years. Time really, really flies. And I started out in the productivity and collaboration space. I was telling BJ, prior to COVID, I came to UCI and I talked at the business school about what Microsoft is doing in the productivity and the collaboration space. So I was doing a lot of Teams type work, right? Like how do you share, how do you collaborate amongst peers, particularly in a virtual world. And about 4 years ago, I moved into cybersecurity. And so very different area, again, a very different sector from what I had done previously, but I'm loving it. I think the mission with cybersecurity is really, really solid. It's easy to understand, right? Like even my kids understand, hey, you know, dad is trying to protect the good guys from the bad guys because there's a very clear discrepancy between those two worlds. And I work in healthcare, so my customers are all US healthcare. So 300 largest healthcare organizations in the United States. So if you think about Kaiser Permanente, CVS, Johnson Johnson, Eli Lilly, Merck, Amgen, locally, you know, Memorial Hospital, City of Hope, Cedar Sinai, those are all my customers, okay? And my team, through my team, we help those US healthcare customers secure their systems, secure their endpoints, secure their identities, secure their cloud workloads. We're also involved in identity protection or information protection, as well as information governance. I can geek out on any of these subjects if you all want like more information. But at a high level, Microsoft is one of the few companies in the entire technology space that offers a platform approach to security, right? If you talk to CrowdStrike, they do endpoint protection. You talk to Ping or Okta, they do identities. If you talk to SailPoint, they do IGA or information governance. Microsoft does the entire gamut, right? So it's very interesting. And I feel very passionate about the work that we do with healthcare because, and I'm sure everyone in this room can relate, we've all been in the hospital. We all know a loved one who had to get medical care. Hopefully, we have more positive experiences than negative experiences. And certainly, I'm sure all of you at some point have gotten the dreaded letter in the mail that said your identity had got stolen or something like that, right? So that is what my team is doing, is partnering with those 300 or so customers and helping them better secure their assets using our solutions. And hopefully consolidating those security solutions so that they don't have to be double licensed and pay millions of dollars to these other vendors. Okay. Some other things about me, you know, I mentioned that I was a manager at Dell. I was manager at Citrix too, and obviously I'm a people manager today. But that was never a consistent thing. I actually went back and forth. I was an IC one day and then a manager, and then when I took that job at Citrix, started as an IC, moved into a management role. Actually, the same thing happened at Microsoft. Started as an IC, an individual contributor, moved into management. So for some people, career is like a straight progression. I would say mine did not look like that, right? So I kind of bounced back and forth, and I was always trying to decide, am I going to be more happy as an individual contributor, or am I going to be more happy as a manager? I decided that this is my path, and I want to be a leader from here on out. I think the one thing that is a consistent string, though, is I've always been in the field. I've always been working with customers. I've always been building relationships and filling that gap between technical and the business world. That's always been my niche, and that's been consistent throughout. And that's offered me a lot of luxuries. I've been working from home for 20 plus years. I get to live here in Irvine, which is not, I mean, is a growing tech sector, as BJ alluded to earlier, but this isn't the Silicon Valley, right? I mean, a lot of those corp jobs that a lot of people are looking for are up in Silicon Valley or other corporate hub locations, Orange County not being really one of them. So I've been able to have relative success, provide security, financial security, emotional security for my family. And if that's the definition of happiness, I would say I'm very happy. So I'm here to talk about anything and everything. If you want to talk more about my path, I can certainly dive into that. If you want to talk about leadership principles, I can talk about that. If you want to talk about technology, Microsoft's point of view, we certainly have a point of view on AI, agentic AI, security. AI and security. So I'm happy to talk about any of that as well. So I'll take a breath, have some water. If you have questions, I love questions, and this is a safe space. I don't think there's a professor in the room. No one's going to get a grade based on what you say. Well, maybe we got one. But still, it's a safe space.
Mike, I'll start off. So, I appreciate the background and talk about your career. At least for me, like a lot of this resonates because I've worked with every single one of these companies. And I'm actually the banking sector, so I've been doing financial services and banking as a CTO for almost like 14 years now. And I think one thing that resonates with me is, if you get yourself out in the field, like Mike said, and understand how your specific specialization in computer science or technology impacts others, I think that goes a very long way, like Mike alluded to. Mike, what's one thing that you feel like you learned or you would kind of give back to the students if you were to start over again and you were in their shoes?
I mean, I talked about it, but that first job out of college is going to put you on that path, right? There are career switchers. I'm not saying that doesn't exist. Actually, I went to business school and I met a lot of aerospace engineers that wanted to work in private equity, right? So there are career switchers out there. I would say that is a minority though. If you can find a job right out of college that you're passionate about, that is directionally aligned with what you want to do in the future, it's a much easier way to continue and just build on that, kind of like what I talked about earlier. Everything is like a building block. And because I do interviews, right? I'm part of a hiring panel. I like to see when I speak to candidates, kind of that foundation that was established early, and then slowly adding new skills on top of that, as opposed to someone who, rented out cars and all of a sudden decided that he wanted to be a SOC analyst, right? So like that would be one of my advices.
Thank you. Anyone else any questions or for Mike or
Yeah, so I think our field is like a very evolving field. Like year by year, there are new technologies, new things to learn.
Yeah.
What advice would you give someone right now who is about to enter the industry, still how they can continue to kind of keep up to date?
Yeah.
And continue to evolve as their career evolves and the environment evolves.
Yeah. The more technical you are, the more involved, the closer you are with the technology, the more pertinent it is that you stay on top of all the changes that are happening in technology. I think the first thing though is you need to realize it's pretty darn impossible to do that, especially if you're working in a high growth environment where the technology is literally changing on the daily. I can talk a little bit about what's going on from an agentic AI standpoint. That's obviously a huge buzz right now in the AI space. Things are changing on a daily basis. And, when we talk to customers, we are the experts in the room, or we're supposed to be the experts in the room. And so there's a lot of anxiety with, everyone coming to you looking for that answer. I think number one, you need to kind of set some boundaries and explain to people that what we're talking about is evolving, right? And because it's evolving, the answer that I'm going to provide may not necessarily be the answer next week. Yeah. So setting expectations, I think, is important. But if you enjoy this stuff, if you enjoy technology, then keeping up with the changes is not going to feel like a chore. If you're in the car, download a podcast, right? Like learn. There's a lot of ways that you can be learning when just optimizing your time. That's another tip that I would offer. Second tip is use all the information that we've got out there. Like YouTube's a great learning source, as well as AI itself. I'm using AI. We have an agent internally at Microsoft called Researcher. I think it's generally available. for other people to use as well. It does a lot more deep thinking. So when I prep for a meeting, I'm prompting researcher and asking it, hey, these are my constraints. I've got a meeting on such and such with this such and such agenda. Like help me prepare for that meeting. So utilizing technology to keep up with technology, I think is also an important.
And I would like to add on to that. Me personally, there is a lot of technology out there, like Mike said, but one thing is to understand how it can be useful from a revenue standpoint. Is this really an expense? Are you going to be saving money? Are you going to be spending more money? How does it impact the entire business? Because your boss is going to, just be all ears when they hear the word revenue. But, technically as technology experts, we're actually an expense on the balance sheet. And so we have to every single day you're coming to work, we're trying to figure out how to actually create innovation to make more efficiencies, to actually get over and actually be a revenue generating P&L. And that's probably one thing I'll probably give back to you guys is think about, definitely understand technology, definitely take, training seminars as much as you can, listen to podcasts, but at the same time, also take a big picture because figure out what your company's selling, figure out how they're going to market, figure out who their customers are, like Mike said, and just try to push the envelope as much as possible. Because I mean, even today, personally, like even with AI coming out, I created a kind of a side hustle, and I'm working AI every single day, and I really enjoy it. But it makes a lot of mistakes. But if you don't have a foundation, you're going to make those same mistakes in your career.
Yeah.
You mentioned watching podcasts. Are there any specific podcasts or YouTube channels that you find helpful?
So I subscribe to a lot of the Microsoft ones just because I need to keep up on a lot of the technology that we put out. So go do a search. There's one of my favorite podcasts, and it's actually not very technical. Anyone in this room could probably get something out of it. It's a podcast hosted by Brad Smith, who is our president of Legal Affairs is maybe his official title, but Brad Smith, he's number one, he's an amazing speaker, so like super entertaining to listen to, but he was also the one that went in front of Congress when Microsoft had some security deficiencies. So we put Brad Smith out there, and he was the one that spoke to the senators and the representatives about what Microsoft was doing as a recourse, right? And launched this whole initiative internally called SFI, Secure Future Initiative. But he hosts a podcast called, Tools and Weapons, I think is what it's called. And he wrote a book as well. The book is fabulous, but it talks about how technology can get weaponized and what governments need to do to put some guardrails around the development of not only technology, but AI, and not leave it completely up to the private sector to figure out. So check out Tools and Weapons. I think she had her hand up. So I'm gonna go to her, and then I'm gonna go to you, and then I'll go to you, okay?
Thank you. You're currently working in cybersecurity, right?
Yes.
As it pertains to health institutions?
Yes.
Yes, okay, perfect. Could you talk a little bit more about the amount of data breaches in 2025?
Yeah.
In comparison to the actual number of victims, because I read recently that the number of victims from data breaches with health data pertaining to health data in 2025 didn't increase, but like the number of breaches did increase and the number of records did.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about how this influences the way that employers look at the labor market and the sort of skills that people would be interested in terms of like cybersecurity?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I feel like this is a little bit underexplored space in comparison to AI and more hot.
Yeah. All right. Great question. So security breaches are on the rise. Actually, I don't have the exact number, but it was something like, if you look at the billions of dollars that are spent in ransomware payouts, like you can put that on the list of the largest economies in the world, and it's like number 6 or 7 or something like that. So it's a huge business to be in if you just want to break into organization. I'm not trying to inspire any of you to be hackers, but it is a huge business, and healthcare particularly is that the number of attacks is on the rise. Historically, these bad state actors, like North Korea, Iran, in even China, have left healthcare alone, with the presumption that healthcare was a necessity of the people and not a commercial enterprise. But what we actually just saw last month was the first post-Iran war attack happened in healthcare. It was one of my customers. I shouldn't name or mention the specifics, and you can look it up if you're interested, but they were attacked by an Iranian-backed hacking group. So certainly on the rise, and it's certainly something that all of my customers are concerned about. There's a lot of, we see attacks from a variety of different sectors, and Microsoft has a research center that analyzes all the 6 trillion signals that we gather every single day to understand if there are patterns. And when we find these patterns, and hopefully we don't find deficiencies in our own products, we obviously publicize and share out with the community. So you asked about like how does this affect like jobs and labor? So we also recognize that there's more security jobs out there than there are security professionals. There's a shortage in the job market, right? So I highly encourage, if anyone's interested in pursuing a career in security, you're going to be in a good spot because I think demand outstrips supply. That being said, what companies are doing in lieu of the fact that they can't fill these seats is they're using agentic AI to replace some of the remedial tasks that security analysts do on the daily. So if you think about a security analyst, shows up in the morning, logs in, what occurred over the last 24 hours? Where do I have threat detections? Where do I have to launch investigations? Do I have any actual real threats that I need to go and take action on? Or how do I patch them? Agentics is going to solve for a lot of that because those are pretty remedial tasks. Anything you could script, you can basically teach an AI model to go and repeat and rinse and repeat. So that is already happening. The problem is the bad guys out there, they're also using agents. They're training agents to break into organizations. So it's starting to be like the blue team is like the defense, the red team is the offense. That blue team, red team is starting to be like AI versus AI. So it's a very interesting dynamic that's going on out there. We're trying to keep up with the curve and just make sure that blue team is armed with the latest and greatest technologies that you can circumvent that rising challenge. But that's kind of what's happening, in the industry abroad. I think what's most concerning is that healthcare is not exempt from being under attack, and it's directly affecting patient outcomes. If you go into a hospital and they're under attack and they're not able to process, much like the MGM hotels in Vegas weren't able to run their roulette tables or check in guests, hospitals can't move beds around and get patients, in and out of rooms or get nurses dispatched to the right locations. So if those systems are down, people are basically resorting to doing all of those transactions by paper, which is very inefficient. Hopefully that answers your question.
My question, I have 2. She kind of segued to the first one.
Okay.
Mythos, I'm pretty sure you've heard of it so far. So everyone knows that it's really good at actually catching those patches of like where cybersecurity is like lacking, or it has found many issues with our current systems, and that's why they're not releasing it to the public yet.
Yeah.
I want to kind of like pivot from like being like a regular software engineer to more of a cybersecurity.
Yep.
Given the rise of the agentic AI, as you mentioned, and given the fact that you're also someone that reads resumes, what would you like to see on like, let's say a student or someone that's like coming to like entering that field?
Yeah.
What would you like to see on the resumes is like what kind of work that they've done with like AIs? Have they built their own agentic AI? It's like, I kind of want to get your opinion in terms of like what you would like to see like CS developers be working with and how they would like to be using these developers.
Yeah.
And also like I've recognized that like in a lot of interviews, they are now asking, it's like, hey, how are you using these tools?
Right.
So I would like some insight from someone that is
Yeah.
actually working in the cyberspace to see like how are actually people using that are working in that space are using it.
Yeah, I mean, and then a lot of interesting points there. I think the easiest one for me to answer is kind of like as someone who reviews resumes and talks to candidates, like what are things that I'm looking for. I'll talk a little bit about Anthropic and Glasswing as well, because I think what you were talking about initially, that was kind of where my mind was going. But on the resume front, and as a potential job candidate, number one, by the time a resume gets to me, it's already been screened by, we probably have a tool that screens it, right, automatically. They've probably already spoken with a recruiter just to do some initial background checking, just to make sure that this person actually knows what he or she is talking about. So by the time I'm talking to someone, it's pretty late stage. But what I look for specifically, okay, probably a couple key things. Number one is their familiarity with our solutions. So as a product manufacturer or product vendor, we're always going to give the leg up to a candidate that actually knows something about Microsoft solutions. That's not easy. I mean, it's easy to say. It's not always easy because in your daily world, and maybe let's say you're coming out of another organization where you were a SOC engineer or SOC analyst, and you didn't use Microsoft solutions. Does that discredit you, right? No, not necessarily, but we will always pivot to the person who has that product knowledge right away, because we know that we can turn them around and get them talking to customers like immediately. The onboarding is shorter, right? If the candidate doesn't have that kind of Microsoft view, then what other products has that person interacted with? Maybe they're coming from Palo Alto, or they've got experience with Wiz, or they know CrowdStrike. Okay, if they know those competitive products, then we can always translate. It's like, French, I'm going to teach you Spanish, right? It's all kind of related. So it's just getting them to translate what they already know into our ecosystem. So that's what I look for. The second thing I look for is more of the soft skills, right? Doesn't matter how much you know, if you can't communicate it, if you can't convey an idea in a succinct way, you're no good to us. And actually, it's one of the things that I wrote. It's actually my bottom point of discussion. I heard this and I thought it was like gold. I was like, oh, I'm going to use that forever. But it's like the 3 B's: be brief, be brilliant, and be gone, right? No one's got time to hear this long oratory, right? So if you got an opportunity to come in and say something, do it. Say something amazing, and then get out of there. So communication skills is what I look for. Going back to kind of what you were talking about earlier, it's a little bit harder for me to I don't know, summarize, because it's a big announcement, and it's just something that hit the news like earlier this week. Is like Anthropic made this big announcement. Microsoft's one of the partners in this project last week, which is basically using Claude's model to analyze software to understand where those vulnerabilities exist. And CrowdStrike's a partner, I think Palo is a partner, Microsoft's a partner. So we all have early access, and we're working with customers that also want a preview, but Glasswing is kind of disrupting the industry right now, because everyone's like, ooh, that's pretty cool. We all know Claude is amazing for programming. Now we can get Claude to look at some code and figure out where are all those gaps and holes. And Microsoft is certainly using it and pointing at our own products first before we even start looking at customer products to understand, do we have any vulnerabilities that we don't know? So that literally just came out this week, and it's been kind of hectic because some customers are asking questions.
Actually, I have another question, sorry.
Okay.
So you did mention that early on in your career stage, you were not the greatest people manager.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, we do have a lot of people that are not the greatest people manager.
Yeah.
So as someone that is working underneath one of them, what do you recommend? How do I gently parent that person?
Yeah.
In a sense, it's kind of like recommendations in terms of what I can do to be able to like communicate with that person better. Because I am also part of that equation.
Yeah,
And from your facial expressions,
Yeah.
yes,
yeah.
totally understandable, but it's like, I feel like it's something that I
But
can
every-
also do.
Yeah, everyone's gone through it where, you kind of have to manage up, right? Managing down, you have the authority, it's a little bit easier to manage down. Managing up is really hard because you're coming from a position of like, you're the one that's supposed to be following orders, right? But, and I don't really know if I have any good tips, but you have to manage up. And if it's so toxic that you're not able to get across to your manager, it's actually one of my points. Don't stay there too long because people work for great managers, not great companies. And that's something that I've found out in my career. I mean, you can work at a great company and that's great. I mean, the benefits, pay, everything lines up. But if you work under a toxic manager that's got a toxic culture and that's not something you can fix, I'm sorry, you're not going to survive there very long. Yeah. So I empathize and I know like what it felt like on my end, but and it depends. Every company's a little different with how do you get feedback up. Like at Microsoft, we have something called employee signals. We do it twice a year. It's a employee survey, which basically gives you an opportunity to anonymously rate your manager. My people are actually in the process of doing that right now. And I've been sometimes thrilled that they think so highly of me. And sometimes I've also been a little, gut punched because I was like, oh, I thought I did better, right? In that regard, or recognizing people, whatever it was. But yeah, I think every company's a little different on how they manage that feedback loop. But I empathize with your situation. Sorry, I want to go to you and then I can come back to you.
In your personal opinion, when it comes to computer science jobs,
Yeah.
which ones do you think are the least at risk and most at risk of being replaced by AI?
Oh gosh, am I gonna get in trouble? I think just straight developers are probably gonna be at most risk, right? So if you're, and that's kind of, I think it's up here somewhere, right? Like technical and business path, take the middle road. In my opinion, that's like the path that's gonna have the least, immediate threat by AI. But if you're a pure technical role, it doesn't matter if you're a developer or a systems engineer or an analyst. If you're just doing a very analytical job, like I'd be worried about that. And I have two kids and I'm thinking about the future for them. And I'm wondering even like the job that I'm doing right now in 20 years, like is my job going to exist? Like we all kind of don't know, but I would say if you can follow that middle path and kind of bridge between business and technology, that's going to be a safe place.
And just to add on to that, like I'm from experience, I create software every single day. That's all I do for banks. One thing I would say is like all React, JS, all the JS frameworks and these different platforms, they're definitely going to be run through AI. I'm seeing it daily. But one thing I always step back and say, how do I support this product? How do I maintain the product? Use your undergrad careers. Like I know, at least for me, when I was here, I was using CS 121, and that's taught me to have some type of base of what to look for when I'm supporting a product, because AI is going to come and go and they're going to see a lot of jobs be displaced, like Mark said, but at the same time, understand what the AI is doing at a very rudimentary level. So you know how to support your product and you know how it's going to drive revenue.
Can I try answering that question? So my name's Amir, I'm a training manager at Iriye. I have a team of around 10 engineers and we're having them that software engineering today. Each of them are using AI to greatly accelerate the kind of work that we're doing. So we have some things we look at that are kind of somewhat of a signal of like how much code they're pushing, like total test, how many are they doing per week, per month, right? They're pumping like 5 to 10x as much as they used to before. So what I would say is that I would actually kind of disagree with you. I would say that if you are purely like an engineer and you love doing your craft, figure out how to accelerate it with AI rather than kind of holding on to your old craft of like, I like writing an algorithm or something like that. That would kind of be my advice. And there's nothing wrong with with doing that. The only tricky thing for students here, who here is a student? Who here is a student? Yeah, so the thing about being a student is that if you use these AI tools to write code, you're not gonna learn it. So you have to have the dual mindset that you have to do your assignments the way you're supposed to. But then after you're done with that, then everything completely flips. If you're not using the AI, you're gonna suffer, right? You have to use that to really accelerate your work. Then you'll have to code review, you'll have to monitor, you have to do all these things. I have an engineer that's doing Ralph Wiggum loops, you know what that is. The guy is just like some machines, like one guy who he's the consumer work with the team, you know, so that was my friend.
Did you have another one?
I guess a little bit related to AI. You work in a management position in a
Yep.
field that is very highly regulated in other regards.
Yep.
I guess perhaps a little bit under-regulated in terms of cybersecurity, but how do you foresee, like, because you're a technical person, so maybe you wouldn't I guess necessarily keep up with policy, but how would you foresee policy changes in the future that may influence the way that people in your field might have to interact with AI and interact with this technology? Because obviously, like, as you said before,
Yeah.
like, there needs to be some rail guards and
Yeah.
some safeguarding with, I believe the podcast that you mentioned
Yeah.
was
Tools and weapons?
Brad.
Yeah, Brad Smith?
Is it
Yeah,
Brad Smith?
Yeah.
Yeah, Brad Smith.
super generic
Um,
name. I know.
And it seems like you listened to that podcast. So could you share like some sort of like insights of like potential changes that you might see in the future?
I mean, I think the government is going to have a heavier hand with policy around AI. I know state of California is already leading in that regard. And California tends to be more of an innovator with policy than the rest of the states. And so I think a lot of the other states are kind of looking to California and seeing like what actually sticks. I'm not caught up so much on recent policy development, but I do know for healthcare, healthcare is regulated by HIPAA and HIPAA compliance. HIPAA compliance is not a hard, fast rule that, you know, you have to have MFA, you have to have the zero trust strategy. I mean, it's very kind of loosely defined, but it did get updated just within the last 12 months. So, I mean, regulation is trying to pick up to kind of meet the more stringent standards of technology given the risk that exists. So, yeah, I mean, that's probably the best I can offer, but it's rapidly evolving. I think I saw a question kind of in the back. Yeah.
I'm curious, you've worked in a lot of like manager positions.
Yeah.
Like, starting from like the bottom, how would you recommend people like work their way up if they're interested in?
Yeah. Yeah, I love the question. So first and foremost, if you want to be a people manager, you have to make it known that you want to be a people manager. It's amazing how some people just think these positions come to you. Like you have to really be a self-promoter. If you want to be in a leadership role, you need to tell your manager that you want to be a leader and get some guidance around, you know, what mentors, what advisor, you know, what other projects you can align with to get those skills. Because the hardest job is always going to be the first. Okay, I guarantee you, once you get the first one, then it's much easier to just point back and say, well, I've done that before. Of course I can do this job, right? But it's that first one that's going to be really hard. So number one, make it very well publicized, make it very well known that this is what you want to do in your career. Number two, and I might have put this up there, which is drive impact every day. Every day is an interview day. See, so I like to think I watch a lot of sports, and recently I've been watching a lot of baseball. It's amazing these baseball players. They play like 5-6 days out of the week. It's like a job for them. And every time they go up to to the plate, they have to hit the ball, right? That's their job. Got to hit the ball. So I think of my job kind of like those baseball players. I have to show up every single day, and I got to hit a ball, right? So what if you think I need to show up for that interview to get that job, you're you're looking at it all wrong. Every single day you're interviewing. Every single day you have an opportunity to meet someone, make an impression on someone. That's golden. And if you do that consistently, it'll open up opportunities.
We have time for about 1 or 2 more questions. I know we have some from Zoom as well for our Zoom folks. And so if we could have at least one of those questions.
Yeah, for the Zoom, we have, with the rise of Gen AI in the tech world, what new tech roles do you see surfacing around quality engineering?
Yeah.
And how can we upskill to stand out?
Yeah.
Sort of Leslie.
Maybe VJ, you're better qualified to speak. I mean, my opinion is everyone needs to be a better user of AI, and even quality engineers need to use AI as a tool. I think you heard it, earlier, right? I think prompt engineering is going to be a thing, right? Just like 20 years ago, people were trying to figure out like SENO and like how do we better utilize search? Well, AI is here. A lot of people don't know how to use AI, and I think there's been really some interesting articles that at least I've come across where people are using AI kind of like search engine. AI can do a whole lot more than just look up facts for you, right? So I think those kinds of roles are going to evolve. I don't know what they're going to call them, but
Yeah, I would probably say, I kind of piggyback on what Amir said. Use AI to excel. Like right now in my day-to-day job, we're using AI to create test scripts, and we're doing test-driven development using AI. So we're having developers or they're having the QA engineers create test scripts, and the developers are following along. AI can bring that together, and then we're using AI to actually do a full regression and smoke test around some of that. And so I would use AI to excel your career, like Amir said. I think that resonates with me a lot, and I do that all the time. But at the same time, don't use it too much. Otherwise, you want to learn from what it's doing and how to support it. Was kind of my previous theme, and so just have that foundational background to make sure you're not getting overwhelmed with what it's developing for you.
The other thing that I'm thinking about is like right now the buzz is all around agentics. Okay, AI is great. LLMs are great, but that's very quickly becoming a commodity, right? So where the industry right now is going is like, how do we build agents? But agents are kind of like teenagers running around with driver's licenses. All of a sudden, it's like, who's monitoring these agents? Do we have an observability control plane? How do we ensure that these agents are doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? Do they have accountability back to a human? Can we trace who owns these agents? Kind of like, who owns these SharePoint sites or who owns these apps? It's the same idea, but they're basically non-human identities. And Microsoft is actually investing a ton of work right now. We're actually launching a new product in May called Agent 365, which is 3 pillars. It's observability, governance, and security of agents, right? So how many agents do you have in your enterprise? What are they doing? And how do you protect them and make sure that they're not up to bad stuff? That's a growth area. And to kind of maybe just build on the question, I mean, if you're out there looking for a job right now, if today is your job and you're not, and you want to get into the AI space, if you're not talking about agentics, you're probably missing out on a wave then.
Yeah. And I think BJ, you had some fun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, when we first started, thanks for joining. We just want to, as an undergrad, please join our alumni group. You can do the join button at the bottom of ICSAlumni.org. If you have any questions, I think my LinkedIn post on here, let me share it along with Mike's as well. And just at the end of the day, we're just trying to help grow our brand as UCI alum, especially computer science, and we want to help each other out. So that's my underlying theme, and that's that.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to me. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm happy to remain connected with you. I have the privilege that I get to work in Irvine, but also live in Irvine. I went to school in Irvine, right? So like Irvine is the center of my universe. If you want to, meet up for coffee, boba, whatever, I'm down for any of that as well. So let's stay connected. I thank you for staying for this whole duration. Definitely been a ego boost for me, and yeah. And again, if you hate what I said, my name is Vijay Kumar.
With that, thank you very much, Michael, and also VJ. I know VJ has an appointment immediately after this one, so if, Michael, if you have some time, I think some of the alums and students may be able to ask some questions.
Yeah.
And VJ.
I have a couple minutes, yeah.
Okay, all right. And thank you for everyone who joined in on Zoom as well. We appreciate everyone coming today. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.